26, verse 35. So it says, Kol Yemei Hashama Tishbos, that all the days of chapter 26, verse 35, all the days of it being desolate, it will rest. That the years, basically the verse says, because you didn't observe the Shemitah year, because you didn't let the years rest, the land rest, therefore, for this reason, the land will be desolate. Means the land will be empty and barren because you didn't observe the Shemitah year. So Rashi does the calculation here. The children of Israel went into exile for 70 years between the two temples, 70 years of exile. And this was corresponding to the 70 years of the sabbatical year and the 70 sabbatical years and Jubilee years, which took place in those years that the Jewish people did not observe. So basically, the Jewish people were in exile for 70 years, and that corresponds to the number of times the Jewish people did not observe the sabbatical year and the Jubilee year. Because of that, we were in exile for that number of years. Rashi does the calculation. How many years were they in the land before the temple was destroyed?
490.
430. There were 430 years before the temple was destroyed. Now, 390 were the years of their sinfulness. Now, until the 10 tribes went into exile. So they were in,
Isn't it every 7 years and 70 years? Wouldn't that be 4?
Well, listen.
Okay.
So the children of Israel, they got Hashem upset. So they went into exile 40 years before the 430 years. So the 10 tribes were sent into exile, Rashi says, after 390 years. That's why it says in Ezekiel, and you lie on your left side, you shall complete those, and you shall lie on your right side. So therefore, this prophecy of Ezekiel was said in the 5th year of the exile of King Yoachim. Then they spent another 6 years in the land of Israel until the exile of Tzidkiyahu. So they were 46 years of sinfulness during the period from the exile of the 10 tribes until the exile of the tribe of Judah. And so therefore, so now go and calculate. For 436 years, that's how Rashi figures out, how many sabbatical years and Jubilee years are there amongst that? What's 436 divided by 7? So there are 16 sabbaticals, Rashi says, for each 100, and 14 Shemitah years and 2 Jubilee years. So therefore, you have for 460, so that for 400 years, you have 64 sabbatical and Jubilee years. Now, for the remaining 36 years, there are 5 Shemitah years. That is a total of 69. And then you have one more year, which is the 436th year that enters the Shemitah, and that completes it to 70. And about them, those 70 years, that's where the decree was made. So Rashi does the calculation for us. That's a little confusing for me, but if you go over it slowly, you'll see it that basically there was an opportunity to observe 70 sabbatical years and Jubilee years, which we did not keep. And for this, we were sent into exile. Problem is that some of them were already sent into exile prior, but the 70 years of exile correspond to the number of years we didn't observe the sabbatical year.
Because that's the fullness of the Jewish people.
That's the fullness of the Jewish people, and also that's the number of years where the exile took place. You don't count the previous 36 years. Okay, so fine. Next pasuk. V'anisharim b'chem, the survivors amongst you, ve'veti morach b'vavam, I'll bring intimidation into their hearts, b'artzotoi vehem, in the lands of their enemies, v'radaf osam, kol aleh nidaf. And this is, they will pursue them. This is a very famous verse because it's probably the most popular book as a bar mitzvah gift given in the conservative and the reform movement. Was the book As a Driven Leaf by Rabbi Milton Steinberg, a very special rabbi, and he took the title for his book from this verse. He would say, those who are amongst you, I'll bring intimidation into their hearts and the lands of their foes, and the sound of a rustling leaf will pursue them. like a driven leaf, and they will run away from the they'll run away from they will flee the flight of a sword, and they will fall without a pursuer. They'll fall down without a pursuer. They'll fall down without a pursuer. She says, I'll bring fright and softness of the heart. So we see one of the curses is that we're afraid. One of the curses is that we're afraid. Fear is a curse. Somebody who's confident is not afraid of anything. Might be too stupid, but fear itself is a curse. Fear itself is a curse. Yeah. What do you think about that guy?
I agree.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what FDR said, there's nothing to fear but fear itself.
Did he come up with that one?
But yes, that's FDR's famous line about, in 1932, trying to buck up the American people during the Depression.
People, yeah, FDR, don't get me started. Not a fan. Okay, yes. Yeah, I mean, there's nobody who took away more, but one of my children was telling me how he's an amazing president. He was the greatest president. I said, you realize he took American citizens and put them in concentration camps? He took American citizens and put them in concentration camps. If anybody like today would ever do that, I mean, it's insane, but that's what he did. He literally put
The Japanese.
yeah. Well, they were Americans. They just, their grandfathers were Japanese.
I want to trick you to the kids.
It's very different, very different. Well, I'm not defending that. It's not good, but these are people who are American citizens who were hardworking, loyal, and he took them and he put them in concentration camps,
Yeah.
work camps, and some of them were killed by American people. Yes, Jerry.
Yes, the creation of the modern state of Israel changed that curse of fear into bold aggression. They
Yeah.
Israelis refer to themselves as sabras, cacti plants.
Yeah, you're 100% right, Jerry, that the people can accuse Israel today of many things, but I don't think anybody is calling them afraid. I think that's very clear that the boys and girls fighting today in the land of Israel they're not afraid. They're very brave and courageous.
Tough on the outside and sweet or soft on the inside.
They're both, yeah. They're very sweet, but they're not afraid. We should be so proud to know them, and they represent us incredibly well. So
FDR was not a friend of the Jews in World War II, that's.
don't get me started about FDR, that he flew his planes over Auschwitz. There are photos of the planes flying over Auschwitz. They didn't bomb the tracks. I mean, but Jerry, did you have an opportunity to vote for FDR? When, because you were, you voted for FDR.
Oh, yeah.
No, seriously. Did you vote for him? Can you tell us?
Yeah.
Oh, you voted for him. Okay, there you go. Pretty amazing.
Well, he was the savior of the American.
Yeah, at the time, yeah, for sure. He won the war, I guess. So that's pretty amazing. I'm not criticizing you for voting him. I'm just saying it's pretty amazing that you voted for him.
He's still on the class. Right?
For sure. That's amazing.
Well, let's see. Wait a moment. I became 21. I was born in 25, and
46.
yeah. So I think Truman was the first guy that I.
Yeah, because there used to be that you couldn't vote till 21. Now it's 18.
Right. Yeah. So it was Truman.
But maybe they let you vote because you were in the army. Maybe let you vote because you were in the, they didn't care. Who knows? All right, well, we'll go back, check the voting records. Okay, so they will flee the flight of a sword as if pursuers are killing them. Rashi says a rustling leaf, like a driven leaf. Sharuach tochafo, the wind pushes it. Umakeu al and pushes it onto another leaf. Umikashkesh, and the leaf rattles, motzi kol, and it produces a sound. So that's the sound, like a driven leaf, that you're afraid of a leaf. That's what's going to be the curse. Kol tarfad shakif, the sound of a rustling leaf, like the phrase shtufot kadim. So that's the terrible predicament we're going to be in, that we're afraid of a rustling leaf. Verse 36. And everybody will be stumbling over each other like a sword is coming, and there'll be nobody pursuing them. And there will be nobody who has the power to withstand your enemies. So I want to say here, this verse always reminds me of a scene I had in my life, that it says, you'll be stumbling over your brothers like there is a sword there, but there's nobody pursuing. On September 12th, 2001, I went down to Ground Zero. I was there as a rabbi, just walking around, hugging people. It was just a tremendous place to be. You just smelled death, and you saw so much death there. But I remember that we were standing around, and then somebody said, the building is buckling. I think it might have been 7 World Trade Center. One of the buildings there, everybody thought was buckling. So it was like with like 30 or 40 police officers and people, and we just started to run. And everybody's like pushing over each other, running. And there was, then after like a minute of running, they said, okay, there's nothing. It was just a false alarm. But that's like this. You're so afraid, you're running, and there's nobody pursuing you. That was my memory of that moment. That was my memory of that moment. Okay, so then the Rashi says, each man will stumble over his brother. When they will run to escape, they'll trip over each other because they will run confusedly. As I was describing, you're running to escape and you're all tripping. As if from before a sword, as if they are fleeing from before killers. There will be fright in their heart, and they're always under the impression that someone is pursuing them. And it's expounded as follows. They will stumble each man over his brother. One stumbles through the sin of another. For all of Israel are guarantees for one another. So Rashi gives us another explanation that it's not one, they're stumbling over each other. Rashi gives us another explanation that we're all going to be stumbling. We're all going to fall because of each other's sins. I mean, to say you're committing a sin or I'm committing a sin, and then the other one is going to be punished for it. Why is that the case? Why do we have to be punished for the sins of somebody else? What do we do wrong? Well, that's what Rashi says. All of Israel are guarantors for one another. And so, like it or not, we're being punished for the sins of our family. But that's what Rashi's saying. But there's another reality that I feel people might not like this, but the reality is that all the sins of a society are committed because the society tolerates that. The sinner does it because they think they can get away with it. Like, sure, there are examples. There are examples of certain, outliers, but most of the sins that are committed are because they're on a certain level socially acceptable. Like, there are certain things that are not socially acceptable at all. Like, for example, you don't see maybe I could be naive, but you don't really see like people marrying their horses. You don't see those type of behavior too often. And if somebody would like walk into a party and be like, hey, this is my paramour, my horse, and nobody would want to even be anywhere near that person. But the other types of sins, like, for example, like, to give you a very, very clear and stark example, like gossiping or making fun of somebody else, we tolerate that. Like, the person can act like that, and then somebody else, and maybe, it's a bad thing, but let me have a l'chaim with him, so these are types of behavior that's why we're responsible for it. Like, if somebody else is gossiping, I'm responsible because I live in that society that created that environment to exist. We all have, maybe we're not as responsible as the person, but we all bear some level of responsibility. If the leaders of a country act a certain way, it's because that society accepts it, tolerates it in some level, winks, and says this is the type of behavior that's okay. So that's why it means that there's communal responsibility. Yeah, Rabbi Yosef, of course.
I just wanted to say that I think that's maybe why we read it before Shavuos, because at Matan Torah is when we accepted that responsibility.
Jeff,
for
do you need
our-
a keeping? Jeff? There's one on the table, I think, yeah, right in front of Dan, maybe. Oh, Di knows where one is. I'm sorry, Rabbi Yosef, if I cut you off, please
No,
say
it's
it.
okay. No, just say that at Matan Torah is when we accepted this arevut for our brethren. So
Exactly, so
and we always read Bechukotai 2 weeks before, or 2 Shabbos before.
yeah, exactly right. It's a communal covenant and we have to read it. You're 100% right. Okay, so now the verse states. The verse states, "Va'avadatem begayim," and you will become lost amongst the nations. Rashi says, when you will be scattered, you'll be lost from one another. It means to say, you will all be scattered even from each other. The Jews will be scattered all over the world. Verse 38, "Va'avadatem begayim," you'll become lost amongst the nations. Va'achla eschem eretz ovechem, and the land of your enemies will consume you. The land will consume you. You know that when you talk about people consuming, we read a verse yesterday, which I want to say, and people were asking, how could this verse make sense? We read a verse yesterday that the people, as a sign of the curse, the people will eat their own children, right? And we were saying, how could that even be? But I was thinking about this. I saw the following, like there's do you know that there's has anybody ever heard of the town of Bern? The city of Bern? Bern, B-E-R-N?
Oh.
In Switzerland.
Oh, yeah, Bern, B-E-R-N-E.
B-E-R-N, I have it right here, B-E-R-N. I think that's where Albert Einstein lived for a while. But anyway, they have a 500-year-old sculpture in the center of the town. Why they would put that there? And it's a man eating a sack of babies. And they don't know why. So I think it's coming from this biblical verse. It's the biblical verse. And the theories there's several theories about why. The first and main theory is that this statue, which is called the Kindle Fresser, was built as this is like the official site about it, that the first theory was built as a sort of warning to the Jewish community of Bern, that he wears a hat that's similar to the yellow pointed hat that Jews were forced to wear at their time. So they didn't say what I'm saying, but my theory is that the sculptor was Jewish and he was or Christian, is reading these verses and saying, if you don't obey the laws, this is where you're going to end up, eating your children, like we said in the section of the curses that we read yesterday. So that's the theory that I was thinking. But that's what it says. The land will consume you. These are the ones who die in the diaspora. Rabbi Yosef, are you trying to say something? No, you're okay, fine. So we'll just have time for maybe one more verse. The pasuk says, "V'anisharim b'chem," those who are remaining amongst you, yimaku ba'avonam, ba'artzot ovechem, the remaining ones amongst you will disintegrate in the lands of their enemies from their sins. Va'af ba'avonos avosam itam yimaku, and also because of the sins of their forefathers with them, they will disintegrate. Meaning to say, when Rashi, so here it sounds like from the literal text, like that the children of Israel are going to be killed because of the sins of their forefathers. But Rashi says, no, that's only the case when they continue the sins of their forefathers. That's what Rashi says.
Because Ezekiel 18 says that doesn't happen in Judaism.
Yeah, and we have a hard time accepting it. We have a hard time accepting
You're
it.
not
But
punishing
I
your
wa-
kids or
I
your
just
parents.
want to say one thing before we stop, because if people aren't familiar with this, and I don't get to it this week, you're going to be in complete shock. So everybody has to be aware of this Rashi. But skip a verse, go to verse 42. It says, "V'zacharti et priti Yaakov, va'af et priti Yitzchak, va'af et priti Avraham." And I'll remember the covenant of Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham. So Rashi's telling us we're going to go back, that God is going to redeem us. Why? Why? Rashi says, why doesn't it say, it says, "V'zacharti et priti Yaakov," but it doesn't say that I will remember Isaac. Lama lo nemra zechirat b'Yitzchak? Why doesn't it say remembrance by Isaac? So Rashi says something very powerful. Yeah, if I tell you this, you're going to be shocked. Ella afarosh shel Yitzchak niro lefanai tzabur u'munach al mizbeach. The ashes of Isaac were gathered up before me and placed on the altar. So, what is this talking about? What do you mean the ashes of Isaac? What ashes of Isaac were placed on the altar? Do you understand the question?
Because he was saved, he didn't have himself.
So this, I want everybody to know, we're just starting it here. If you really want to pursue this topic, read the famous book, The Last Trial by Shalom Spiegel. And in the Middle Ages, when Jews were forced to kill their children because they were being attacked by the Crusaders and were kidnapping their children, and their families died in mass on a whole, the Midrash was found that, and this is what Rashi reflects, the Midrash was found that Abraham slaughtered Isaac. His ashes were on the altar, and then he prayed to God and he was resurrected. So it's not like a tertiary midrash. It was a primary midrash, which for a while was the dominant midrash, and then it fell out of favor. But that's what this Rashi is reflecting, the ashes of Isaac. So I didn't want you to go through life without being aware of this. And obviously we're just starting it here. We'll pick it up later, but I'll stop recording at this point.